Hey everyone, warm welcome to all the attendees and the panelists. Thanks for joining this week's Vendasta's webinar. We're live here from Vendasta headquarters in the sunny Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Today being the 5th of December, we have this amazing opportunity to explore and learn about Zenreach and essentially how it connects digital advertising to in-store results. I'm pretty excited for this webinar myself. Let's quickly introduce you to me. So my name is Arnima and I'm the success onboarding specialist here at Vendasta. So my job entails speaking with customers day in and day out. And I have here with me John Kelly, the CEO of Zenreach. And he's a man with many feathers in his hat. I did a bit of a research on you, John. You seem to have had an English degree and a philosophy degree and a law degree. Well, kudos to you there. Thanks for joining in us over the webinar today. Now, for all the attendees, we will be answering your questions towards the end of the webinar. So please type in any question in the chat box. And if I don't get back to your questions over the webinar, I assure you I'll personally be following up and sending in those answers over an email. All right, so John, I will hand over the presentation to you from here, and let's learn more about Zenreach together.
Great, thank you very much, Arnima. And wow, those degrees happened a long, long time ago, so don't hold them against me. Great. Yeah, we're just loading this up. So really briefly, thanks for the opportunity. Vendasta has been a great partner of Zenreach's now for more than a year, probably close to 2 years at this point. And we're very excited at this opportunity to bring a little bit more understanding about what we do to your base, your partner base. With that, I want to set up the framework a little bit of this company and why we exist. And everybody's kind of talking about in the market, e-commerce. E-commerce is doing really, really well. It's growing at anywhere from 10 to 15% year over year. And last year exceeded $500 billion, which is a fantastic amount, considering just 20 years ago, that was almost zero. One of the biggest, most incredible success stories of any industry is when you can develop a new industry, which is essentially what e-commerce has done. And why has it grown so well? And why has it done so well? In part, thanks to the shift of digital advertising, right? Digital advertising this year, for the first time ever, exceeded the spend over traditional media. So think of this as newspapers and radio and television. It's the first time ever that more money has flowed into the online advertising than the offline advertising. A transformational year, which is great for all of us in this space. And if you want to really peel back the onion a little bit to understand why is it that e-commerce is growing so fast and why is that digital advertising is growing so fast, it's really because of some of the capabilities that digital marketing brings, right? With digital marketing, you've got online, you've got a really good understanding of who your customers are. And when you understand who your customers are, you can do segmentation. You can target certain messages for some of them and different messages for others. When you get to an understanding of who those customers are on a one-to-one basis, you can do things such as personalized ads. Hey, I saw that you were looking at that pair of shoes. You've left the site. You can retarget them with that specific pair of shoes, that one person with that one set of shoes. Visit behavior is really important. Hey, this is a person that comes to my site quite often. I want to make sure that I retarget them quite often, or I can spend more to bring them back because they have a higher propensity to buy. And then when they do come back, I can measure the effectiveness of these things. Did this campaign drive 50 conversions or 500 conversions? Did I get more purchases out of this or fewer purchases out of this? And when I have that understanding, I can optimize for those outcomes. With purchase history, hey, John looks like he spent $20 in the last 3 weeks in a row. I can make really good understanding of what he likes and then recommend products that might be suitable to him. And then with an understanding of where the traffic from my site comes from. Does it come from Google? Does it come from SEO? Does it come from affiliates? Then I can do a much better job at targeting people in those places that drive the traffic to my site. So all of this means that, you know, e-commerce is growing really, really well, that digital advertising is growing really well, as eclipsed traditional media. So offline is dead, right? We got nothing to do if you're in the offline world. Well, wrong. In-store commerce, the offline world, is still 85% of all retail. It's still the lion's share of everything we're doing. And even though the growth rate for the offline world is lower than the growth rate for the e-commerce world, the net dollars added to the economy is almost exactly the same. And so if you're looking at kind of where your big opportunity is, and the one that has kind of almost been neglected in this revolution, it is in the offline world. And so our company at Zenreach, what we were founded on and what we've been always trying to drive towards is how do we bring the efficiencies of the online world to the benefit of the offline world, right? And that's essentially what the online retailers, the online pure play retailers have learned, is that if they don't move into the offline world, if they're not kind of looking at things omni-channel, that they're missing out. And so that classic example of Amazon, probably the most successful, arguably the most successful online retailer ever, is branching out into the retail space. So is Casper and Nantucket and Warby Parker and all these other ones that grew up in the online space only have decided that they need to be in the physical world as well. They're missing too much of an opportunity there. And I'll just share with you anecdotally, one of our recent clients grew up in the online world, and they launched their first stores about 2.5 years ago. They've now up to about 50 stores currently. And lo and behold, much to their surprise, over 50% of their revenue comes from the offline world now. And this, again, was a retailer that had no online presence whatsoever just 3 years ago, or offline presence whatsoever. All right, so that's kind of the framework, is that you ignore the offline world at your peril, right? It is clearly the biggest opportunity ahead of us. How can we take advantage of it? And what we at Zenreach said was, what real world, the offline merchants need is a way to understand the identity of their customers. How do they understand the identity? How do they understand the behaviors of those customers that are in the store? And how do you do this in a seamless manner that doesn't require them to generate a new type of behavior? How do you tap into their existing behaviors to understand what they're doing? And that is a difficult question to do, right? It's a difficult thing to answer if you're looking at it from kind of the traditional point of view of, do I see and count people as they come in through counters? Are there ways in which I can measure these things? It's not an easy, intuitive thing to do if you're not deploying a solution like Zenreach. So one of the questions that we ask is, how do you measure in-store behavior? Is it through some type of counter? Are you looking at some other type of solution that might be out there that has inherent flaws? And we'll talk about that in a second. Can you attribute the results of any in-store traffic from your advertising? How do you tie an ad that you put in front of a consumer with an actual walkthrough into the business, right? And even if you could do all that, how do you optimize for the best results, okay? And so that's essentially what Zenreach is here to do. We leverage the Wi-Fi signal, okay? And the Wi-Fi signal is not just an opportunity for a consumer to come in and go through a guest experience where they can get unlimited Wi-Fi in exchange for a sign-in, but it also acts as a sensor and can determine devices and who's coming in. And we use that to determine the customer in-store behavior, their visit behavior, the one-to-one direct understanding of who's in the premise. We've built a network, and we'll talk about that in a second, which has allowed us to do things like behavioral segmentation and targeting. And then we take all of that together and we've created what we call a walkthrough measurement. Whereas we know somebody who is, when they've seen an ad or when they've opened an email from us, We know then when they come back into the store, and we'll walk you through that in a quick second. So really briefly, how does this work? How do we take the Wi-Fi signal and leverage that? The first part is a consumer walks in with a cell phone, and this cell phone is essentially the anchor of our modern society. The one thing that almost nobody leaves their home without is the cell phone. You can even leave without your wallet, but almost everybody picks up their cell phone. That cell phone is looking for a Wi-Fi signal every 30 seconds. It's a default setting on just about every cell phone that you can have out in the market. There's a reason for it. A lot of the carriers would love for you to funnel data through Wi-Fi than through their own cellular networks, and consumers usually prefer that as well because it doesn't cost. So the consumer walks in to, in this case, a coffee shop. The cell phone is pinging for a signal. And when you deploy the Zenreach solution, it's essentially a software layer that sits on top of your Wi-Fi, we detect that ping. We detect that the consumer has walked in, and we know, device, in this case, 1212, has come in and is looking for a Wi-Fi signal, okay? The next step is the consumer says, great, there's unlimited Wi-Fi at my favorite coffee shop. I want to log in. We have a seamless, what we call portal page that allows you to see here, in this case, it's Coffee Den, that says, hey, welcome to the Coffee Den. Just click here to come online, enter your email address. The consumer then enters their email address, and there's a greeting that says, welcome to unlimited Wi-Fi. Thanks for coming in. And that's it. That's the consumer experience. They get unlimited Wi-Fi. On the back end, what Zenreach does is we take this identity, in this case, John Smith, and we map it to that particular device, okay? To Mac ID 1212 in this case. And now we have some really important information. What, in addition to this, is the consumer is logging in not just to the Wi-Fi experience and to the coffee shop, but they're also logging into Zenreach, and they become a Zenreach customer. And that's really important, and I'll come back to that in a second. So now the consumer is on the Wi-Fi. On the back end, we know who the consumer is. We supplement this with existing data about consumers. It's available in the public domain, and we tie it to their MAC address. Then, anytime that consumer comes back, we recognize the MAC address, we recognize the cell phone, and we say, John has come back in, even if they don't log into the Wi-Fi. And that's the kind of the most important thing is, if they don't log into the Wi-Fi, it's still the same device that's being detected. And as a result, we know that John has come back in the next day or the following day or the day after that. I mentioned that you log into Zenreach in addition. And so what we do is we have a very large consumer base, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that allows us then to see anybody who's come into the coffee shop in this case, even if they haven't logged into that particular coffee shop, okay? So in this case, we recognize many more people than any particular merchant might recognize on their own, because we have the network. We have the network of consumers that have logged in and have given us the permission to take a look at and understand who they are and when they're walking in. So we call those invisible customers. These are the customers that are in a particular merchant's location, but don't necessarily log into the Wi-Fi, and therefore are not necessarily known to the merchant, but they're known to Zenreach, okay? When you have that information, you can do a lot of really cool stuff that benefit the merchants and everybody involved, okay? So this network of consumers, how big is it? It's extraordinarily big. We've got over 42 million consumers in our network across the globe. And we're growing at a pace of almost 1 million consumers every month. So on a very significant increase. That's really powerful because these consumers are not just available to us as people that we can understand their abilities and who's coming in and who's walking in, but also the ability to market to them. This network is unique in that we have never bought any consumer data like to add to the network. We might supplement what we have, but we never bought consumers and we've never sold these consumers. So if you ever want to tap into this network, you've got to work through Zenreach. We hold the privacy of the consumers at the highest of importance. And you're targeting real people. Unlike a lot of other networks that are out there where the best you can do is get cookie 1, 2, 3 and hope that that person is interested in your products, or hope that that's a real person, or hope that the segmentation that they've been put in is correct. We're not targeting cookies, we're targeting consumers. And we have the identities associated with that, which allows us to do some really cool things when determining kind of who the people are that come to your store. Good. So now we've got this consumer network of 42 million. We can then use that to bring in new customers to our merchant base. Let me walk you through how that works. So really briefly, you say, I want to target people. I want to do new I have a pretty good understanding of who my customer base is. They're men, I want to look at them in this particular age bracket and this particular locale, and I want to be able to target them. So what we do is we say, great, we understand who this is. We take a geolocated approach, and we put advertising in front of these consumers. It could be on Facebook, it could be on Google, it could be on all the major platforms. And now we take it, activate that across the platforms. This can be on mobile, on desktop, on iPad. And we're targeting them with a very specific message. Hey, here's an opportunity to come to the store. Here's a happy hour. Here are some deals that you may be interested in, because you are located in an area that's very close to where we live. You have shown a particular affinity, like you match the profile of the consumers that are interested in this. And we're putting the ads in front of you in a timely manner. Then when you walk into the store, what we call walkthrough, we measure the performance of that. How many people were targeted? How many people actually came in? What were the times of days that they came in? What frequency did they come in? What were the best times of day? What were the best days of the week when they're coming in? And from that information, then you can optimize the results for the best walkthroughs. And one of the most interesting things that you can see in Zenreach is that the interaction of the online ads is very different from the walkthrough rate. And one of the anecdotes that we like to share is those people that engage with your ads, those people that click or like the ads on Facebook they have, might not actually be walking in. And the demographics of the people that perform best in terms of click-through rate might be very, very different from those who actually walk into your store. And when you have that understanding and you have that data, you can then optimize for the right outcome. And in our situation, as we look at it, driving in-store traffic is the outcome that most of our merchants want. And so we're optimizing for that. Cool. So now from this leveraging the Wi-Fi signal and understanding who the consumers are that walk in, you have a really good understanding of who the best customers are. And now you can do, you've got the opportunity to leverage that to bring in new customers to the merchant base. This is where only Zenreach gives you these unique insights. It's not about directing your advertisements in front of particular cookies or devices. It's about actually getting in front of people and measuring that in-store impact. Hey, I put advertisements in front of 1,000 people and 25, 50 of them walked into my store. That's a great return. I know that on average they spend $50, and therefore I've got a really great return on ad spend. In addition, Wi-Fi, as being able to understand who's in your store, allows you to do really good one-to-one attribution associated with this. I targeted 1,050 people walked in. This is great. Now I know exactly kind of the numbers associated with that. We do this across all the platforms and social. And when you understand who's coming into your store and you've got the devices and you know who those are, you can therefore start to measure what has been really elusive for a lot of offline merchants, and that is the lifetime value of those consumers. Hey, I've seen John, he comes in 3 times a month. He's been a loyal customer of mine for the past year. His lifetime value is very, very high and really good. And how many people fall into that category, right? We can give you that information. As we touched base before, everything we do is privacy compliant. The consumer opts in It's not an opt-out. They opt into participating in our network. The consumer has the ability to see what data we have about them. If they want to opt out, they can opt out if they want to. It's all available on our website. It's all first party. There's no concerns associated with the regulatory framework that's existing. We've already prepared for all of those changes, particularly the CCPA in California. Great. So now, with all this information, what does that enable merchants to do? Well, it obviously enables them to expand their customer visibility and understanding and their reach. On average, we recognize with our 42 million consumers, about 1 in 7 store visitors. And for the most of the merchants that we work with, those would be completely invisible to them. They would have no understanding of who these consumers are. So anywhere from 15 to 20 to as high as 30% of the consumers, 30% of consumers that walk into a particular merchant's business, we will have information about, and we can build really strong understanding of the profile of the consumer base. 2, we just touched base on this. That allows us to drive new consumers into the store locations. For 72% of all of the advertising campaigns run through Zenreach with a merchant partner, they're getting 3 times the return on ad spend than they would see from any other channel. It's performing extremely well. Obviously, when you understand the consumer base, who they are and how they operate, and you target people according to those values, you can outperform basically the less targeted options that are available in the market. 3, now when you understand who's coming in and who your loyal customers are, you can also see when they stop coming. And when they stop coming, that can be a huge lost opportunity, particularly for your most loyal customers. We did some data polls recently where we were looking at across our merchant base, and if you take the top 20% of consumer visitors, those tend to be your most loyal ones, they can generate up to 80% of the revenue associated with any particular location. If you lose 2, 3, 4% of that, you are losing a disproportionately high amount of revenue, or at least putting that at risk. And lo and behold, when we just pulled the data, we saw that our merchant base was losing almost 10 million customers every year by not sufficiently targeting them, by not engaging with those consumers at the right time. And so that's what we're helping do, is bring them back. And then converting those one-time visitors into loyal customers. This is probably one of the biggest opportunities that has gone unnoticed for many in the retail set in the offline world. Is a lot of people come in once and don't come back, and as high as 60% for some of our merchant base are one-time visitors. They come to the restaurant, they come to the shop, they maybe make one purchase or leave without making a purchase. Those are your best opportunities to create loyalty with them, and yet we don't have, outside of Zenreach, a really good mechanism for doing so. We can help with that. Great. I'm going to walk you through 2 quick use cases, which I think might be helpful to all of you online. One is one of the biggest bowling alleys in North America, and they were, 100% of everything they sell is essentially offline. They've done a great job of engaging people online to try to drive them into the bowling alleys, but they had no means of really understanding what the effectiveness of all their advertising was doing. And so we created seed audiences where we were trying to analyze the characteristics and demographics of their best customers. And we said, can we drive new customers? Can we get in front of new customers for them and be effective in doing so? And literally within the first month, we were able to generate 43,000 customers at an average cost of a remarkable $2.35 per customer that walked through, which is a huge opportunity, a fantastic return on ad spend. So for every dollar that was spent, it was essentially a $15 in return that they got, because they've got a pretty good average order value, which was translated into $1.6 million estimated revenue in that first month alone. So think of the power of what that can be delivered when you're looking at the very specific characteristics of their most loyal and clients, and how can we attract more of those. Another quick use case would be a coffee shop, a leading coffee shop chain that we work with, where we wanted to identify the lapsed customers, right? Hey, these are people that had been coming with a pretty good frequency that just dropped off, and can we bring them back? And over a 2-month period, we were able to reacquire just over 13,000 customers at a 6-to-1 return on ad spend. So these were customers that came back not just once, but ended up coming back 2, 3, and 4 times within that 60-day period. So we not only brought them back, but we brought them back and made them a loyal customer, which had an annualized opportunity of over $20 million. These are just 2 quick samples of some of the results that we're seeing when we're leveraging this great data and harnessing this for the benefit of our merchant base. Briefly, what I want to do is now share with you some information from the Zenreach dashboard, so you can see the typical information that we convey to the merchants. And one of the first things is when you know you're leveraging Wi-Fi, is essentially you can know how many people actually walk into the business, right? And so we make it available to everybody. Here's how many people we're seeing over this 30-day period. 36,000 walkthroughs. That traffic is actually down from the previous month. And maybe that's seasonality, maybe it's not, maybe it's up, but you'll have that visibility. In addition, when you're creating that guest Wi-Fi experience and giving an opportunity to log in and therefore have each one of these consumers become part of your database and become part of your CRM, we're collecting those contacts. That's an extremely important part of how you're able to get in front of these consumers. And we display that. How many people collected? How many people signed in? How many emails did you get contacts for? In this case, 820 over 31 days, collection of 26 contacts per day. That's great. This is all flowing directly into the CRM, allows you to enable that. We can send out emails in an automated fashion so that you set this up once, and anytime you bring in a new consumer, you can say, thank you very much for your business. Or you can say, hey, we've missed you. We haven't seen you at a certain period of time. You can set up a lot of really effective automated email outreach campaigns. And all of this is set up one time and is running in the background in an automated fashion. Great. So in this case, again, another sample of some of the data that we convey. Hey, you sent out 260 different, what we call smart emails. Oh, excuse us, folks, we got a little bit of construction going on next door. 260 emails were sent out. This is where you're looking at, hey, thanks for coming in, thanks for purchasing, or something like that, these automated ones. And then how many people actually came back? So how many walkthroughs did you have from those smart emails that were sent? 21, fantastic. These are people who saw the email, opened it, and walked in. Just gives you an understanding of how effective the campaigns are. And then, as we talked about breaking down the customer visits, how many people were one-time visitors? How many people came back 2 to 9 visits? What was the incremental revenue associated with those? How many, the average ticket value? All of this is available in the dashboard for the merchants to see the effectiveness of what they're doing with Zenreach. And then the ability to take this demographic information and break it down further. Wow, in this particular merchant's case, it's pretty evenly split between men and women, but there's a high age propensity between the 25 and 34 age bracket. And of all of their locations, the ones in California have the highest traffic. So this is just a little bit of a sample of some of the data elements that we make available to the merchant base. Okay, so let's go into the specifics of what we make available through Vendasta and to all of you. So when you enable this service, so the ability to have the Wi-Fi collection along with email messaging, we call that our Engage product. If you want to put ads in front of people, obviously we have to pay for advertising on the various platforms like Google. That's a separate one. So Engage is really about the collection as well as the email outreach. Ads enables us to put ads in front of consumers through Facebook and Google and others. Really briefly, this is our Engage pricing. We have 3 tiers. Essentially, the acquired tier is our base package that runs at $99. But if through Vendasta, you can get that at a fairly significant discount at $69. The retained package has everything they acquire, plus walkthrough tracking, profile enrichment, as well as the ability to send up to 50,000 targeted email campaigns. And then the build package has everything, including satisfaction survey. Hey, on your way out, how did you enjoy your time here? Did you like the restaurant? How was the service? Real-time notifications so that if that review is bad, you can alert the manager, you can alert the store owner, and before it gets out to the review sites. All of this is available, and you can see the pricing. We give a fairly significant discount to our Vendasta partners. The next one, for those that are interested in customer retention beyond email, for those who are interested in retargeting and winning back loyal lost customers or acquiring new customers, you have to reach those customers through advertising. And our package is a $1,500 a month minimum spend. If you have more context or questions about how all of this works and how we do it, we'd love to engage with you, and we'll share the contacts at the end of this presentation about who to reach out to. We are already compatible with a number of different Wi-Fi routers. Why is this important? Because no hardware is required to get started with Zenreach. So if you have a Cisco Meraki Wi-Fi router in your location, the only thing you need to do in order to enable Zenreach is basically go into your dashboard and put a configuration setting in. That's great. That means getting up and running is really simple. It takes about 15 minutes to start. If you don't have one of these routers, or working with a router that's not necessarily compatible with Zenreach, we do have the opportunity to send you what is called an access point. You plug it into your router and then you get started. It's a very simple procedure that, again, takes about 15 minutes. We've got a self-service tool that can walk you through that as well. That's a one-time fee and $99 essentially for enabling your router to be compatible with Zenreach. And then how to get started from the Vendasta platform. Obviously, you want to sign in. You go to Discover Products in your dashboard. Under Products, you look for Zenreach. You'll see those images below. So Attract plus Engage, right? And then a little bit of details about how that works. And when you've read through that, you want to click Enable, and then it sends us a note that allows us to contact you immediately and get you started and up and running. Good. If you, there it is again, search if you can't find it through Managed Products, Attract plus Engage on Zenreach. You can click on that. And with that, I think we're going to turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Kelly. It was an amazing explanation of the entire platform. We do have a couple of questions here from the attendees. I've cherry-picked a few. We can address them while here. So somebody asks, what about integrations with reward programs? Does Zenreach offer any kind of integration?
Yes, it's a great question. Yes, we're actually integrated with one of the loyalty platforms, one of the biggest ones. We have a direct integration with Patronics. So if you're a Patronics customer and you want to have all of the contacts that are collected flow directly into your loyalty program, that would be a seamless integration that's already available.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great. I know you did mention about the privacy and how secure Zenreach is. We still had another question on specifically GDPR compliance.
Yeah. So yes, let me just give you like so everybody's on the same page. GDPR has essentially like two foundational premises associated with it, and that is a consumer needs to be able to access the service without giving their information. And so in any countries that are GDPR compliant, we create a service that says if you want to get online without kind of giving us your information, you can still do so. So that box is checked. And then the second one is the consumer needs to be able to find out what information we have about them and to either fix it or delete it. Both of those features are available on Zenreach. So as a consumer, you can go to our webpage, you can see at the bottom, click on the privacy link, understand everything we're doing, and then you can see what information we have about you. And if you want us to delete it or correct it, we can do that as well. So we are GDPR compliant.
Wonderful. That's great to know. Kelly, John, when we introduce Zenreach to partners, we often get asked if this is something that they could be offering to automotive dealers or any other industry or domain outside of a cafe or a salon, let's say. Where would you say Zenreach fits well in terms of domains and businesses?
Yeah, so there's two answers. Like, it's a great question. I think that this is absolutely applicable and useful to a multitude of verticals. The auto industry is one that's particularly interesting, in part for two reasons. One, they usually have a pretty high customer acquisition costs. And so that allows them to spend a lot more on marketing. And two, there's actually a fairly high, what we call dwell time. The consumer stays for a fairly long time to make this decision and has a higher propensity to log into Wi-Fi in that situation. So it's absolutely directly applicable. In fact, we're launching a car dealership very soon.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it was an amazing explanation, John. We as users did understand that you can measure consumers' behavior and you can also attribute those results. But the optimization bit, I think that's what we really learned in today's webinar, how essentially these optimization happens. Another question from an attendee here is around routers. So we often get asked if these routers are shipped within the first 20 or 48 hours, what does it take for the setup? How difficult is the setup?
Yeah, okay, so let's be clear. We don't sell Wi-Fi. We're a software layer that sits on top of the Wi-Fi. So we're not actually selling you a router per se, but we are selling you what's called an access point that plugs into the router that enables Zenreach to take it, like, to be that layer on top of the Wi-Fi. So the access points that we ship are pretty much, compatible with just about any router type that's out there. We ship those out usually within 24 hours of an order being placed. That arrives within 2 or 3 days to the business. We actually have an entirely super simple instruction manual that's in the box on how to where to plug it in. And we also have an app that you can basically scan. It pulls up and here's a step-by-step instruction that you can walk through right from your cell phone in order to get started. And if it's so simple where we've actually got a light that will turn green when you've done everything right, so you've done it well. And if that doesn't work, we also have a self-help line, and you can call us at any time.
Wonderful. John, another question from an attendee here, asking if Zenreach would help prospect, sell, and perhaps even execute a specific use case that they have.
Yeah, if the opportunity is large enough, yes, we're happy to devote resources. We've got a sales team that would love to talk with you about them. So yeah, I would say inquire directly with us, and we can help service that.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. We do have a couple of more questions, but we are coming to the end of today's time together. We'd let John get to the important things that he has to do. For all the other questions that we have, I will be writing back to the attendees with all the answers. And thank you, John, once again for all the information that you shared with us today. We'd also like to share along the contact details for John himself and Brandon, who are more than willing to get in touch with you for any questions. Apart from that, all the attendees, please feel free to write to us. I have your questions and we'll get back to them we'll get back to those questions shortly. On that note, John, I'll take your leave, and all the attendees, thanking you once again for a great time and a huge ton of information.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.